Romans chapter 12 and verse number 18 in the New Testament. And it says this, if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with everybody. Now, we all know that there are some people that just won't let us live at peace with them, right? But then he goes on and gives us some construct relative to that. Don't avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. Vengeance is mine. I will repay. You don't have to worry about it. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. And for by doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. Make him feel bad. In essence, is what the text is saying. Don't be overcome by evil, but overcome what? Evil with good. Somebody does something mean and bad to you, don't go home and try to figure out, I'm going to get them, I'm going to get them. Wait till we get to school tomorrow. I'm about to get them, right? Okay. Now, let me chase a rabbit just for a moment. Look at that verse in Romans chapter 18. Your enemy is hungry, feed him. Thirsty, give him something to drink. And then think about our immigration policy. There are other passages like in Leviticus chapter 19, beginning in verse number 9, that talks about everything you plant in your field, do not pick it up. Leave a segment of it for the poor. Think about that in terms of how we deal with the homeless. And we segregate finances that are not necessarily, we spend it all on military, we spend it on bullets, and we leave very little for butter and bread. So think about those policies. Because it's important to God, not only how we handle the world, but how we handle one another. Are you with me? So let's walk through this because we're talking about culture, how we make a change in culture. And the first thing that we addressed on last week was that you will never make a change in culture if you don't care about it. We're going to look at two positions tonight that Christians take when we start addressing how to cultivate culture. But number one is that we got to care about culture. We have to care about what's going on around us. And we display how we care in America in a number of ways. We vote, right? We get involved, we volunteer, but we have to have some compassion and some caring about what's taking place in our world. And then number two on your handout says we should cultivate our culture. And of course, we define culture as our local and our local neighborhood and the world with which we live. So culture emanates from our house, culture emanates from our neighborhood, it emanates from our city, it emanates from our state, it emanates from the United States, and it emanates all across the world and how we treat people across the world. So when people hear about culture, usually and typically, we think about it from a national perspective. It's amazing, isn't it? Because most of us watch local news. But when we think about culture, we think about it from a national perspective. Usually on three fronts. One is we think about culture from the vantage point of Hollywood. Because Hollywood indeed adjusts how we live, right? Some of us buy our clothes based on what we see people in Hollywood wear. Say amen, guys. Some of us buy our shoes based on what we see people in Hollywood wear. So we think about it based on Hollywood. Then we go to the East Coast and New York. You know, we think about culture coming out of New York. And a tremendous amount of culture from the financial world all the way down to the movie, theatrical, and our thought processes comes out of New York. And then, of course, the other national platform relative to our thoughts on culture is where? D.C., Washington, D.C., where all of our political thought takes place and where we make moves as a nation to indicate to ourselves and to indicate to the rest of the world what we consider to be right, what we consider to be wrong, what we consider to be ours, what we consider to be yours. Somebody say amen. And many of us become discouraged because there really is little that we can do to change Hollywood. Now, I'm not discounting the fact that we can pray. We can pray. All of us can pray. I'm not discounting that. I'm not discounting the fact that we can write. We can write. All of us can write. We can pray. We can write. But for the most part, we think that the influence that we have on Hollywood is minimal, if existent at all. Right. Secondly, the same thing is true relative to New York, and pretty much we think it is true relative to D.C. So many of us become discouraged because we feel that because we can't change the national platform, that there's really not anything that we can do to cultivate the society and the culture that we live in and that we are a part of. But I need us to understand tonight that God recognizes that culture is not just national, but it is also local. It is also local. God is not expecting you to effectively, by yourself, change Hollywood. Touch your neighbor and say, praise the Lord. Nor is he expecting you to change New York. He expects us to have influence in the world, but individually, he does not expect us to make that change. God is expecting you to make a change in the culture that you are a part of. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So everybody in here belongs to a part of a culture. God expects you to do everything you can to effectively impact that culture. If you are a stay-at-home mom, what is your culture? My household, where I live, the man I'm married to, the children that I raise, the neighbors that live around me. God does expect you to change, impact, and influence that culture. Part of the way that we can do that is like what Hannah did. Hannah said, God, if you will give me a child, then I will bring that child to the temple on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. I will make sure that my boy understands the precepts and the principles of God. How many of us do that? How many of us do that? How many of us pray with our children? Sadly, we have to say and suggest